Did you know that Japan's anime industry is facing a serious crisis? The number of anime titles keeps, yet the budgets reaching the production floor haven't gone up at all. The cause lies in a unique system called the production committee. And even when a film earns billions at the box office, only a tiny fraction of that money actually reaches. Today, Okada Toshio breaks it all down. From the hidden money flows behind Japan.
When watching videos, keep the lights on and sit back from the screen, okay? So the latest Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse. From the very beginning of the movie this time too. I'm blown away. This is amazing. How do they even come up with these ideas? The visuals, the way they move the art, it's just one over and over, over and over, but, well, partway through you start to feel kinda worn out, you know? If you count the first Spider-Verse, this is around the middle of a trilogy. And usually the middle of a series is when things get most exciting. But this time, it is fun, but the story goes all over the place. And it doesn't get confusing, it's just, you don't know who to root for anymore. But it is entertaining. Well, also, other movies have been overdoing the multiverse thing too. The multiverse itself, meaning there are all these worlds with different possibilities. And different versions of yourself in each one, right? That stuff was already done to death in Rick and Morty, the American anime. They really exhausted it completely. Even in the TV series, they've done everything, and by the later seasons 4, 5, 6, Rick and Morty basically just does multiverse stuff for entire episodes. A story starts in one world, and as you're watching normally, toward the end you get, like, a different world's Rick and Morty. They model the grandpa and the grandson show up, and they kill the main character we've been following, and successfully take his place, and there's an episode like that. Honestly, they've basically already done everything you could possibly think of with the multiverse concept. I mean, there's even a whole planet that's just Rick. Incomplete line, insufficient context. There's only Rick and Morty living on one planet. It's where Morty's collected from every multiverse possible, right? They're living peacefully together, fighting each other. There's different versions of evil ones too. There's robot versions that evolved from plants. Basically, they're doing literally everything you can think of. Compared to that, this Spider-Verse is pretty tame, honestly. Because all the spiders have the same struggle. And the main character tries to fight against that destiny. And then all the others, whether there's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or hundreds of millions, I'm not sure, all these Spider-Men. They chase after the main character as enemies, trying to stop him. And see, I think that actually makes the world smaller. You see this multiverse, this infinitely expanding possibility, but it actually makes the world feel smaller. Like, when you hear there are billions of stars, and this galaxy is an island universe. And there are hundreds of millions of these in the cosmos, you don't even know. When they tell you the universe is truly infinite, your head just spins. You really feel that infinite scale. But if every single one gathered together and had a meeting, is Earth guilty or innocent? And decided guilty. We're destroying Earth. In some movie like that, if you actually showed that conference room scene, it actually becomes small scale instead. It scales down. That's one whole world with infinite Spider-Men. The moment they all chase after the main character telling him to stop, it becomes petty, you know? Aoyama-sensei, who draws the Detective Conan manga, had this earlier work. A manga called Blade. My daughter was doing kendo in elementary school. So I thought if she's gonna do kendo, she should read this manga, so I had my daughter read it. It's Musashi's Sword and Blade. Recently, Kim Tak apparently recommended Musashi's Sword to someone and said, "Oh, Kim Tak really gets it. If you're gonna do kendo, I always thought you should read Musashi." But Blade was easier for kids to get into, so his daughter got hooked on it. I mean, I like Blade too, but right at the beginning. It's a kendo story, but I thought the enemies were a kendo. like a Cobra Kai type group, and suddenly they're occupying the National Diet building. They occupy the National Diet, grab the microphone, and start laughing like ha ha ha, and the world just feels smaller, you know? The creator probably wanted to make it feel epic, like a kendo story conquering all of Japan. And probably wanted fans to feel that way too, but it kind of ended up feeling cheap instead. Detective Conan, I think that's basically the core issue here. But like, a famous university detective named Shinichi Kudo from TV and newspapers gets shrunk down, and with just the black organization, it barely works. But after dragging it out for decades of series, I think it's the same Blade phenomenon, it just doesn't work anymore. That's what I'm thinking. So when the scale's supposed to go up but it just gets exhausting instead. That's my take on Across the Spider-Verse. This right here. The Spider-Man movie Spider-Verse, I went to see it. Look, forget watching Okada Toshio Okada. Go see it now. Go tomorrow. Most of all, the look is incredible. By look, I mean the unique composition and visual style of the film or cinematographer. Like, in Shinkai's anime, the backgrounds are stunning. And Hideaki Anno's live-action stuff has this great they use fisheye lenses, wide-angle lenses, creating a really unique visual style. We call that kind of thing the look, and Spider-Verse look is basically comic books. All kinds of comics, American comics, Japanese, they've made the coolness of all comic art into their visual style. It's visually interesting, and they use speech bubbles and dialogue throughout the anime in a really fun way. Plus the color palette, and effects that look like Japanese screen tone. Basically, it's like opening a manga spread wide and seeing it all at once. That kind of impactful, compositional shot. Every single frame feels like you're looking at a color spread from a really talented manga artist. Every cut is like that, it's just incredibly overwhelming. And incredibly cool. I think most people haven't seen it yet, so I won't spoil the story. But honestly, it makes me worried about the future of Japanese anime. Toy Story didn't make me feel that way. American animation just went in the 3D direction, and I was like, okay, it's interesting, really interesting, and I liked it. But I thought it was just a different evolution from Japanese anime. Spider-Verse though, it's not just influencing Japanese anime. It's more like a shock to the system. The problem is, even from the marketing, it's hard to understand what it is. This poster looks cool enough, but it doesn't seem incredible. That's why you need to see the American version of the poster. This is the American Spider-Verse poster. And it's totally different. All these different Spider-Men show up throughout the movie. Verse in Spider-Verse means world, think of it that way. Universe means uni, single, verse. In other words, one world controlled by a single god. A singular world. So if someone dies, they're gone forever, they never come back. If someone dies, there's no one to replace them. That's the universe concept. A single multiverse, on the other hand, is the idea of parallel worlds, multiple universes. For example, if I got hit by a truck and died right now, in an overlapping multiverse right next to this one, I would have noticed my shoelace was untied just before stepping into that same truck. While I'm tying my shoe, the truck zooms right past me. So the difference between universe and multiverse is, one has no other possibilities, the other has infinite possibilities. Basically, a world where anything goes. Spider-Verse is a multiverse where all different kinds of Spider-Men exist together in one world. It's a collection. In this movie, it's like a natural dimensional anomaly device. This dimensional anomaly brings several Spider-Men into Miles' world, the main character's world. And they all get involved in the action. On the American poster, they're all lined up, different Spider-Men from different multiverses. The one in the black coat is from a black and white world set in 1933. A private detective Spider-Man, Spider-Man Noir. Since he's in a black and white world, he can't solve a Rubik's Cube at first. He's like, "What's this?" because he can't tell the colors. Plus, he's drinking a milkshake. I wondered why he's drinking a milkshake, and it turns out in his 1933 world, it's still Prohibition era, so the private detective can't drink alcohol. That's why he's drinking a milkshake instead. But he lives in a black and white world. The white one is Spider-Woman. This tiny character here exists in the animal anime world, and he's called Spider-Ham. On the left is a girl named Penny Parker, who comes from the Japanese kawaii anime universe. Now, each of these characters is actually the one and only Spider-Man in their own world. They all got bitten by radioactive clouds in experiments, gained Spider-Man powers, and fight evil in their own settings. But they all ended up coming here. So there's a scene where they're all gathered in one room. It's set up like this, but going back to what I mentioned about the look. See this wall? It's a bit hard to tell, but it's not just, it has this screen tone effect on it. And Miles's forehead too. It's got that screen tone look to it. And this Spider-Man big guy's forehead is the same way. It's like low-quality American color print halftone dots. So this isn't trying to show realistic 3D characters or doll-like figures. You can really see they're moving actual printed comic book artwork. What really stands out as different is Penny Parker. Between the Japanese kawaii anime character and Spider-Ham, this pig here. Since he's from animal cartoons, he just pulls out this huge hammer from his pocket and whacks enemies with. But when he's swinging that hammer at enemies, his movement physics are different from the other characters. The others all follow realistic physics. So with heavy objects, inertia takes effect. And when you lift it up, there's this wind-up before it moves. But Spider-Ham comes from the cartoon world. So his physics are different, he can swing that heavy hammer instantly. So each character has the physics laws of their own world. He can swing this hammer in an instant. For example, even with the same female character, this girl Gwen here, each individual strand of her hair is actually created with CGI. But Penny Parker's hair uses that cel-shaded look from Japanese anime. So it's just flat color with highlights on top, you see. Each character has different physics and different camera lenses working for them. Especially this Spider-Ham character. Since he's a cartoon character, he's always backlit, no matter what. Backlit regardless of where the other character's light is coming from, with his edges always glowing like an effect. It's kind of like how they do animal animation. And all of that stays in the same frame and moves together, and you can view it as one complete image. So that's the technical side. For the story and everything else, check it out yourself in theaters. I watched the 2D Japanese dub version. The voice actors are really talented, so I usually don't like watching foreign anime, but honestly, with Spider-Verse, I'm glad I watched the dub. Watch it dubbed first when the 2D image isn't too dense with information. Then watch it again in 3D with subtitles and IMAX. And I think that's the best way to enjoy it twice. This technology, I wonder. It's amazing, and with something like Dragon Ball, what they actually wanted to do, bringing characters from the multiverse. Like what they were trying in Dragon Ball Super, is probably really like going forward, I wonder. Gradually, in various anime, creators are. They want to bring all the characters from their previous worlds together, you know? That's this multiverse expression. Rather than doing it all with hand-drawn cell animation, they ended up doing it in CGI, which was kind of a shock to me. Like, wow, anime's still so much more it can evolve into. It's really exciting to see. Spider-Verse, definitely check it. Please subscribe to the channel. Alright. Yesterday, the official stream I did with Yamama had some really interesting, and I thought I'd recap that a bit, because it really clarified a super easy to understand problem in the anime industry. Why does anime production keep increasing, but anime studios stay broke? If you listen today, you'll totally get it explained in one go. Usually on my streams, I don't create villains. I don't really frame it as, this guy's the bad guy, that's why it sucks. Today, just to make it clearer, I'm gonna add some good guys and bad guys. I'm gonna actually create a villain and explain it that the basic problem is, like Yamama said, it's the production committees that you hear it all the time. Japanese films are struggling because of production committees, but I never really understood what was actually wrong. A production committee is basically a bunch of old guys who invest in anime. I mean, technically there are younger guys and women too, but to imagine them as the villains, picture all the shady-looking old dudes. You can think of lots of them. Production committees are basically groups of old guys who invest in anime, like record companies that handle music and voice actors, for example, toy companies that handle figures and merchandise. Then there's the TV networks that broadcast it, and publishing companies that run those companies invest as production committee members and they get their names on the production committee. Each one wants to. Now, what do we mean by rights? Well, asserting, for example, if you only invested 3% into an anime, you only get 3% say in how things. So nobody wants to just put in 3% or 1%. Everyone wants to invest more. With Studio Ghibli films, production costs run like 2 to 3 billion yen, right? If you look at the production committee, theoretically if it costs 2 to 3 billion, the investing company, if that's the budget, there could be 100 or 200 investing companies. But the reason there aren't that many is because of how the individual companies' rights get divided up. It's like, how do I put this? People are commenting about it like shareholders, and it comes down to influence as a shareholder. Meaning, 10% or more. Ideally you'd want 40%. That's what every investing company, but even if that's tough, they want at least 20%. Some are really pushing for 50%. Like, say it's a 10 billion yen. Ideally your company would love to say, we'll put in 5 billion. But here's the thing, if it's a 10 billion production that's guaranteed to hit, the other companies won't just sit quiet about it. They're like, if you put up half, we'll just be doing whatever you say. So instead, there's this haggling, we need at least a quarter, 25% for us. And it becomes this, otherwise the other companies get nothing out of it. If one, the others won't even participate. So the average investment rate ends up around 10. From what I know, it usually works out to somewhere between 20% and 40% per company. If one company wants to take the lead, they secure 40%. And then distribute the remaining 60% among 10 or more companies. That's actually a pretty cunning and clever method, right? We put in 40%, and the other 60% split among each putting in about 6%, right? Then you've got and a bunch of minor shareholders, so your voting power becomes. When that happens, the way that anime gets made, the production does pretty much go your way. But if you do that, for a company that can only invest 6%, it's pretty frustrating, you know? Now here's where the funding is all supposed to be transparent. Like, first come first served basis, or whoever offers the biggest budget. That would actually work as a fair market, a free economy. But this is where Japan comes in, collusion gets involved. Basically, which companies get a seat at the table, and what percentage each one gets assigned. It's all decided behind closed. So the production committee system never really comes to light. The problems don't come to light. Like I said before, if we put in 50%, and it doesn't matter if one company drops out. That's why you sometimes see films where the producer has real power. Even in the production committee system, some films where the producer had real control when you look closer. It turns out one central company actually ponied up major money and kept other companies from investing at all. That keeping them out part is the key. If I were, hypothetically, the most powerful person in Japan, controlling music rights, voice actor management through a record company, anywhere's fine. Doesn't matter if it's Taijiku Records or whatever. There's this record company in Osaka called Taijiku Records that specializes. So let's say I'm the producer for Taijiku Records. Then I'd put in half the budget. I'd cover half. You all split the remaining 50% among 10 companies. But here's the thing, Taijika Records has a budget cap, a ceiling, and my discretionary authority tops out at 50 million yen. That's how it works. So I'm covering 50%. But if I'm only putting in up to 50 million, then this producer ends up capping the total budget at 100 million, right? The production team says it needs 200 million, 300 million, and they tell you it'll definitely sell. You should spend 200 million, But this producer, because he wants full creative control, capping the budget at 100 million becomes the most rational move for him. When that happens, even if you know this anime will be a huge hit, a spending ceiling gets imposed. So if you try to push back, keep pushing back, and they keep rejecting, if you accept everything, you end up in an all-in poker situation. In all-in poker, you've got raise after raise after raise. And obviously whoever has the most money wins. Right? To prevent that kind of thing, in normal poker, a ceiling is set, and betting limits are established. Same way with anime, right now a ceiling is set. And it's this clustered situation where people who've been making anime and broadcast station producers and all that, plus producers from major toy companies, right? They have a maximum budget cap they can invest in any one project. So if that cap is 200 million, if our limit is 200 million, we can only put in 200 million. But so then, to make 200 million equal 10%, the theatrical anime budget ceiling ends up being 2 billion. That's the cap problem created by production committees. Well, say a toy company wants to invest while maintaining their controlling stake. They run the numbers on figure sales and can only invest 100 million. Normally in that case, they'd put in 100 million, other companies would rush in. And the total would be, that's how normal companies operate. But in Hollywood, or anywhere really, not just Hollywood, India, film production happens that way. What's unique about Japan is this one industry, one company rule in the business. If it were America, say Kenner, Mattel, and Hasbro, 3 toy companies apply for Star Wars. They'd accept all of them. Then they'd ask how much each can invest. Hasbro, you handle figures. Kenner, you do action figures. Mattel, you do Hot Wheels, kind of thing. They divide it up that way. But Japan, internal conflict within production committees. Basically, these powerful executives, the money guys I mentioned, they hate if a toy from another company outsells theirs. The person in charge loses face. So they created this weird one company that's what it comes down to. So the production committee ends up being pretty small, with basically the same people every time, and nobody gets a chance. Everyone knows what everyone else is. So basically, the budget ceiling for any anime gets locked in from the start. But then, what if a Chinese company says they'll put in 1 billion yen? If a Chinese company offers 1 billion yen, you're not gonna turn. It reduces risk. But here's the thing, if they actually put in that full billion, if they say we're putting 1 billion into this anime, under the committee system, that Chinese company could basically fund the whole but then there's no profit for anyone else, so here's what they do instead. Like, domestic everyone wants the DVD sales rights, or the merchant or a cut when it sells overseas, everybody starts wanting a piece because nobody wants. So like I said, those 10 or 15% rights distributions that the original companies want, well, the Chinese company put in 1 billion. They don't actually use all of it. They split that billion into smaller chunks, 50 million yen per share, 20 shares total. 50 million yen per share. One share is 50. They mix in smaller investments like 10 million yen among all the other stuff. So then you end up with 20 different projects piling up. It's like portfolio investing. 20 projects keep multiplying, and the Chinese company's stake gets capped at around 30%. On the 50 million yen ones. This is why we're drowning in anime right now. So why do people keep saying there's no budget in production? So why are they making so many more anime? Well, Japanese anime is proven to be a hit. Investment money is pouring in. But here's the thing, when they take all that investment and increase the per project budget, the foreign investments cut gets bigger, right? Like, 60 to 70% of the animation's capital becomes foreign money. The people on the ground aren't actually they've been dirt poor for so long. Whether the Dubai, China, India, or wherever. They just want decent pay, you know? But instead, they split it up. The production company sets a ceiling on what they can easily handle and says, look, You used to make this for 10 million yen. So make it for 10 million. You used to make that for 20 million. So make it. They're using Chinese money just to reduce their own risk. So instead of raising the 20 million yen project, they keep the budget at 20 million. Same budget as always. They just cut 10 million from Chinese investment, put the risk on, and use the remaining to shrink their own company's share. And then they just dump all that extra money into more new projects. So in the end, anime projects just keep multiplying endlessly. There's tons of investment money out there, but individual anime aren't getting any more budget. And instead of money flowing vertically down to the staff in the trenches, it flows horizontally and gets stuck at the top. That's incredible. Animation makes money and has great potential. Money flows in from all over the world, but a single project's budget doesn't increase for that reason. These old guys just arbitrarily decide this is how much you need to. So when you talk about this stuff, every producer gets cagey, right? Because the more talented the producer, the more they understand this setup. Like, Maki didn't necessarily say this herself. But within this corner of the world, without Maki, without Django, the project wouldn't have. Which means, for Maki, there's a certain amount of money she can raise, and within that budget, she has to maintain like a 30 or 40% stake. Or else, the other committee members' voices get too loud, and the project becomes you lose control of it completely. To handle it as the overall producer yourself, you need to put down about 30 to 40% from your own company's budget, and that's the really tough situation behind why in this corner costs however many hundreds of millions to make. So honestly, Japanese anime producers need to operate more radically at the individual level, not as company producers. Not company producers, but people like Maki who run their own operation. Producers with their own company who can move 500 million, even a billion, in their own discretion. Then they can say I'm putting in 500 million, so come on over, China company. Come on, Japanese production committees, you put in 500. That's how you can make a 1.5 billion yen animation budget work. But see, individual Japanese producers don't have that kind of money. So there are investors willing to put money in from all over the world. But Japanese anime has a fixed ceiling budget. And you know why? Because these old guys, the usual players, the regulators in the industry, they're the ones deciding the ceiling for anime budgets. And when a project threatens to go over that ceiling, instead of raising, they actually split up the project. If 1 billion yen gets invested, instead of funneling that money to the actual production to make one great, they split it up and think, let's make 10 movies. So the number of anime just keeps multiplying, but the money on set never goes up. That's basically how it works. So yeah, people say the production committee system isn't great. And mechanically speaking it isn't, but on the flip side in Japan, it also means pretty half-baked anime projects get greenlit easily. Like, anime that really shouldn't get 20 million still end up getting made anyway. So it's a mixed bag, but today I wanted to deliberately frame it as good versus bad and talk about it. With box office numbers in the tens of millions and I don't think everyone really understands how it all connects. When I made Wings of Hanyamais, I actually asked, how much of this money comes back to us after making a film? To be honest, it doesn't. With Wings of Hanyamais an aim for the top, Gainax at that time basically became an anime made by Bandai. Because Bandai was so when the film makes money at the box office, it's Bandai that receives. Gainax, on the other hand, gets their production costs up front and that's basically where their involvement ends. But what caught my attention was something called recouping the production. In other words, if we make more money than what we invested, then there'll be a second film, a third film, that's what we were told. For example, back then, the film Royal Space Force cost about 360 million yen to make. So for that 360 million yen to properly come back to Bandai, for them to feel like wow, investing was worth it, how much box office revenue would it need? Or rather, what exactly is box office revenue in the first place? I also hear about distribution revenue, so I wondered so I looked it up. The numbers I heard back during Hanyamais haven't really changed much even now. First, box office revenue is the total ticket sales from movie theaters. If 1 million people watched at 1,800 yen per ticket, What's Studio Ghibli's take? 1,800 yen times 1 million people equals 1.8 billion. Half of that goes to distribution revenue, the money that goes to the distribute, and then half of that again, 450 million yen, is studio. When discs sell DVDs, that is. We're not really counting when it airs on Japan TV or networks like that, it's said to be about 10% of distribution revenue. So if distribution revenue is 1 billion yen, broadcast fees for 3 or 4 airings would cover it. Or it's said to be around 10% over several years. So about 100 million yen is the industry. DVD sales are hard to predict these days, so a lot of places don't even count them. Your name must have crazy broadcast. Yeah. Your name had box office revenue over 100 billion yen, exceeding 150. If box office revenue is 15 billion, distribution revenue would be 7.5 billion divided by 10 equals 700. It's like, literally unbelievable. That's what it could end up being. But this is industry standard, so if you're a strong company, you can negotiate for 10% of distribution revenue. Like, if someone powerful like Suzuki from Studio Ghibli is backing you. For example, Studio Ghibli could say, we're making anime every single. And back in the day, they could negotiate 10% of distribution revenue with a 3-year or limit it to just 3 films, that kind of. But your name is Toho, so I'm not sure they can push that hard. Anyway, that's how it works. Box office revenue is basically the total sales from movies. So why do the numbers break down this way? Well, the theaters keep half the money, right? That other 4.5 billion is distribution revenue, which goes to the distribution the company that spreads the movie all across Japan as profit, plus marketing and publicity costs. You know how movies get advertised in sports papers and magazines? That all comes out of this budget. And then there's entertainment reporters, film critics getting wined and dined, parties and such. It's called a junket. You invite media people. Like when there's a film festival in Cannes and actors walk the red carpet. You've seen that, right? The distribution company takes the actors and directors there, plus sports journalists and entertainment reporters, film critics from various publications. All that comes out of the distribution company's publicity budget. And finally, this 450 million is what Studio Ghibli actually. Ghibli's characteristic is that they advertise the films themselves on Nippon TV. Yeah, so it's not the distributor doing the advertising. So that's considered Ghibli's own out-of-pocket advertising. However, in Ghibli's case, Nippon TV is also one of the production companies that's invested in. So Nippon TV does the TV advertising at a pretty much rock-bottom price for them, which really helps out. As for these numbers, I heard these figures back when I was struggling with that. So I'm wondering if it might be different now. Plus, I've seen documents that say so I wasn't. But then I found in an interview with Suzuki-san where he said that Kiki's delivery service had a production budget of 400 million yen, and you'd be in the. That's what I found him saying. So this 1/4 rule still holds, meaning only 1/4 of the box office revenue goes to Ghibli. That ratio has apparently been unchanged for the last 20 years. Thanks so much for watching till the end. Please subscribe to the channel too.